A Hollywood legend sits behind the wheel of a rusted Ford pickup truck at 5 in the morning, his famous long dark hair hidden beneath a worn baseball cap. His 6-year-old adopted daughter clutches a teddy bear in the back seat, her blue eyes wide with wonder as they approach the iron gates of their new home. But what happens next will shatter the silence of this quiet neighborhood forever. A guard slams his hand against the window so hard it cracks. The little girl screams. And the man they just threatened, the man they laughed at, the man they called a trespasser at the gates of his own mansion, is about to teach them a lesson the entire world will never forget. The truck sputtered as Keanu Reeves pulled up to the Thornwood estate entrance. The engine had been making that same tired, wheezing protest for nearly 8 years now, a sound that embarrassed most people who rode with him. But Keanu never fixed it. He never even considered it, because this truck, this beaten, rusted, barely breathing Ford F-150, had belonged to his best friend Bobby Anderson. Bobby had bought it the summer he married Sarah, when he was still a broke software engineer coding in a garage, and Sarah worked double shifts at an architecture firm to pay their rent while Bobby chased a dream they both believed in more than anything. That truck carried Bobby and Sarah on their first grocery run as a married couple. It hauled the furniture for their first apartment. It drove Sarah to the hospital the night Emma was born, Bobby White knuckling the steering wheel while Keanu talked him through the panic on speakerphone. And 3 years later, after Bobby was already gone, it drove Sarah to the oncology ward, where she would spend the last 18 months of her life. Bobby died of pancreatic cancer 5 years before Sarah's diagnosis. When Sarah got sick, she called Keanu from the hospital and said the words that rewrote the rest of his life. "If anything happens to me, promise you will take care of Emma. You are the only person in this world I trust with her." He had promised without hesitation. And 14 months later, sitting beside Sarah's hospital bed on the night she slipped away, Keanu held the hand of the woman who was not his wife, but who had become the closest thing to family he had left, and he became a father. Not by blood, by love, by a promise that meant more than any biological connection ever could. No, Keanu would never fix that truck, and he would never sell it. It was all he had left of Bobby. "Daddy, is this really our new house?" Emma's voice floated from the back seat like a melody from another lifetime. Keanu caught her reflection in the rearview mirror. Those wide blue eyes that belonged entirely to her mother. The tangled blonde hair he still could not figure out how to braid properly, no matter how many tutorials he watched at 2 in the morning. "Yeah, sweetheart. This is home now. It is really big. It is. Mummy would have liked it." Keanu's throat tightened. His knuckles went white on the steering wheel. He forced himself to breathe. Yeah, baby, she would have loved it. And she would have. Because Sarah designed every inch of it. The iron gates loomed ahead, tall and imposing against the evening sky. Keanu had purchased this property 6 months ago through a company called Anderson Holdings, named after Bobby. He and Bobby had been best friends since college and business partners at Reeves Security Technologies, the cybersecurity firm they had built together from nothing. Bobby designed the systems. Keanu funded them. Together, they had created military-grade facial recognition software that now protected government buildings, corporate headquarters, and luxury residential communities across the country. Bobby never saw the company reach its full potential. And Sarah, during the last 4 months of her life, had poured every remaining ounce of her strength into designing this house. Not for herself. She knew she would never live in it. She designed it for Emma, for the daughter she was leaving behind, and for the man she had entrusted that daughter to. "Build her the house I cannot live to give her," Sarah had whispered to Keanu one night when the morphine made her drift between worlds. Every room, every color. "Make it the home, Bobby, and I would have given her if we had the chance." And now Keanu was pulling up to this mansion in Bobby's old truck, wearing a hoodie that had more holes than fabric, carrying the only person left in the world who made his heart beat with purpose. Tonight was supposed to be special. Their first night in the home Sarah had dreamed about, sketched on napkins during chemo treatments, and described in whispered detail during those long nights when the pain medication made her drift, and the only thing anchoring her to earth was the act of creation. He rolled down the window as he approached the guard station. A man stepped out. Mid-50s, military, short graying hair, weathered face, jaw set like concrete. His uniform was crisp, his posture rigid, and his eyes were already scanning the truck with the kind of disdain that does not bother to hide itself. "Can I help you?" Keanu Reeves. "I am the new owner of—" "Hold on." The guard raised his hand, cutting Keanu off mid-sentence. His name tag read, Patterson. Frank Patterson studied the truck the way someone might examine a dead animal on the road, with a mixture of disgust and mild curiosity about how it got there. His eyes traveled from the rust spots on the fender to the cracked windshield to the fast food wrappers on the passenger seat. New owner of what? Exactly? The Thornwood estate. This property. Frank Patterson laughed. Not a chuckle. Not a polite smile. A full, dismissive, echoing laugh that bounced off the iron gates and traveled down the quiet street like a gunshot. Right. And I am the president. He leaned closer, his breath sharp with coffee and contempt. Look, buddy, I do not know what you are trying to pull, but deliveries go around back. Service entrance is on Maple. I am not making a delivery. I own this house. Sure you do. A second guard emerged from the station. Younger, broader, late 20s, with the kind of swagger that came from a badge and too little oversight. His tag read, Lawson. Danny Lawson positioned himself at the front of the truck, arms crossed, legs spread wide like he was guarding a military checkpoint instead of a residential gate. Problem here. Patterson? Guy says he owns the place. Danny Lawson snorted. He actually kicked the truck's front bumper. The entire vehicle shuddered. In this thing? Daddy. Emma's voice trembled from the back seat. Her small fingers tightened around the teddy bear she called Starlight, the last gift Sarah had given her from a hospital bed. Daddy, I am scared. Keanu turned quickly. It is okay, sweetheart. Just stay in your seat. Why are they being mean? They are not being mean, baby. They are just confused. But they were not confused, and Keanu knew it. He had seen this look 1,000 times before, in the eyes of casting directors who told him he did not have the right look, in the smirks of real estate agents who assumed he could not afford anything worth showing, in the raised eyebrows of school administrators who could not believe that a single man with no biological connection to the child was raising her in their district. It was the look that said, "You do not belong here." Frank Patterson rapped his knuckles against the truck's hood. All right, fun is over. Turn this thing around before we have to make this official. I am not going anywhere. This is my property. Your property. Frank laughed again, but there was an edge to it now. Something dangerous. Mister, the man who owns this place could buy and sell you 100 times over. He does not drive a truck that belongs in a scrapyard. People are more than what they drive. Not around here, they are not. Frank pulled out his radio. I am calling this in. We have got a trespasser at the main gate. The word hit Keanu like a slap across the face. Trespasser. At the gates of his own home. In front of his daughter. The sound of heels on pavement interrupted the moment. A sleek black Mercedes had pulled up behind Keanu's truck, and a woman was stepping out like she was descending from a throne. Late 50s, platinum blonde hair pulled back so tight it could have been painted on, cold gray eyes that calculated the value of everything they touched, wearing a white designer dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. She walked like she did not just belong here. She walked like she owned the air itself. What is the holdup? I have dinner reservations. Sorry, Mrs. Whitmore. Just dealing with a situation. Catherine Whitmore. The name registered in Keanu's memory from the closing documents. HOA president. The woman who had sent him 14 emails about community standards before he had even unpacked a single box. She approached the truck and peered inside with the detached curiosity of someone inspecting an insect under glass. Her eyes traveled from Keanu's worn black hoodie to the cracked dashboard to Emma in the back seat with her teddy bear. Is there a problem here? No problem, Mom, Frank said. Gentleman claims he owns the Thornwood estate. Catherine's laugh was sharp enough to draw blood. Is that so? She looked at Keanu the way someone might examine a stain on expensive carpet. And who exactly are you supposed to be? Keanu Reeves. Never heard of you. Keanu blinked. In 25 years of Hollywood stardom, in a career that had spawned some of the most iconic action films in history, he had been recognized in grocery stores, airports, subway platforms, and once in a remote village in Thailand. But tonight, with his hair hidden under a baseball cap, his famous face obscured by an unkempt beard grown thick with grief, and his body wrapped in the kind of clothes that made people look through him instead of at him, Catherine Whitmore did not see an Academy Award nominee. She saw nothing. That does not change who I am, Keanu said quietly. Catherine's eyes narrowed. She leaned closer to the window, close enough that Keanu could smell her perfume, something expensive and suffocating, like flowers preserved in formaldehyde. Let me explain something to you, Mr. Reeves, if that is even your real name. This neighborhood has standards. We have expectations. And those expectations do not include. She gestured at the truck, at him, at everything he represented, whatever this is. But I understand you have expectations. But I own this property. I have the deed. I have identification. I have You have nothing. Catherine's voice turned to ice. Except a rusted truck, a delusional story, and apparently a child you have dragged into your little scheme. My daughter is not part of any scheme. Then why is she here? Because she is my daughter, and this is our home. Catherine stepped back, shaking her head slowly like a teacher disappointed in a failing student. Patterson, I want this man removed from the premises immediately. Yes, Mom. Keanu felt the shift in the air. The guards moved differently now, purposefully, with the kind of authority that came from permission to act. Danny Lawson started around to the driver's side. Frank Patterson unclipped something from his belt. Sir, step out of the vehicle. I am not stepping anywhere. Sir, I will not ask again. Daddy. Emma's voice cracked like thin ice over deep water. Daddy, I am scared. Keanu's heart did something it had not done since the night Sarah died in his arms while he held her hand and promised to protect her little girl forever. It folded in half. He looked at his daughter in the rearview mirror. His little girl. Not by blood. By something stronger. By the last promise he made to a dying mother and the first promise he made to himself the morning he woke up and realized he was all Emma had left in the world. She was pressed against the back seat, starlight crushed to her chest, blue eyes swimming with tears she was trying desperately not to let fall. This was supposed to be night. Their first night in their new home. The home her mother had designed from a hospital bed while cancer consumed her body one cell at a time. The home Sarah had described in whispered detail during those final weeks, when speaking cost her everything she had left, and she spent those precious words on floor plans and paint colors and purple curtains with silver stars. It is okay, sweetheart, Keanu said softly. Everything is going to be okay. Does not look okay from where I am standing. Catherine crossed her arms, a thin smile pulling at her lips. Perhaps you should listen to the officers before this gets any more embarrassing. Danny Lawson yanked open the driver's door. Out. Now. Keanu did not move. I said out. Danny grabbed Keanu's arm and pulled hard. Keanu stumbled out of the truck, catching himself against the door frame. Daddy? Emma screamed from the back seat. Stay in the car, baby. Do not move. But Emma was already scrambling, trying to reach the door handle with fingers too small to grip it properly. Frank Patterson moved toward the rear door of the truck. Might want to check on the kid. Make sure she is not stolen. The word stopped Keanu cold. Every molecule of oxygen left his lungs. Stolen. They thought he had stolen his daughter. The word was even crueler than they could have known, because Emma was not his biological child. He had adopted her. He had signed papers and stood before a judge and legally became her father. But in that moment, the word stolen cut into every insecurity he had ever carried as a man raising a child that did not share his blood. Every whispered question from strangers, every raised eyebrow at school pickup, every form that asked for biological parent and forced him to check a different box. Do not touch her. Keanu's voice came out low, controlled, but there was something underneath it, something ancient and absolute, something that made Danny Lawson's grip loosen by a fraction. Do not you dare touch my daughter. Sir, we need to verify. Verify what? She is my child. She is my daughter. Her mother and father both died, and I have raised her alone every single day for the past 2 years. I fed her. I clothed her. I held her when she cried for her mommy in the middle of the night. I learned to braid hair from YouTube videos at 2 in the morning. I sat in the hallway outside her bedroom every single night for 6 months because she was afraid to sleep alone. Do not you dare tell me she is not mine. Frank paused, radio halfway to his mouth. Danny shifted his weight uncomfortably, but Catherine Whitmore stepped forward, completely unmoved. Emotional manipulation. Classic con artist technique. She turned to the guards. Do not fall for it. Call the police, and call Child Protective Services. The words hit Keanu like a physical blow. CPS. They wanted to take Emma, the one thing in this world he had sworn to protect. The child 2 dying people had entrusted to him because they believed, above all others, that he would keep her safe. You cannot do that. I can do whatever I want to protect this community. She is my daughter. So you keep saying. Yet here you are in a truck that is falling apart, trying to claim ownership of a $12 million estate. Catherine tilted her head, studying him like evidence at a crime scene. Where is your proof? Your documentation? Your identification? In my wallet, and in the security system that I helped design for this property. Catherine waved her hand dismissively. Everyone has a story. The more desperate, the more elaborate. A small crowd had begun to gather. Neighbors emerging from their homes, drawn by the commotion like moths to a porch light. Some held phones recording. Others whispered to each other, shaking their heads. Keanu could hear fragments of their conversations. Does not look like he belongs. Poor kid must be terrified. Security should just arrest him. Frank Patterson lifted his radio. Dispatch, this is Patterson at Thornwood main gate. We have a potential trespassing situation. Suspect claims to own the property. Possibly has a minor in his vehicle. Requesting police and CPS response. Copy that. Units en route. Emma's sobs cut through the static like a blade through silk. Daddy, please. I want to go inside. I want to go home. Keanu looked at his daughter, then at the guards, then at Catherine Whitmore with her satisfied smile and cold gray eyes. He thought about Sarah, about the nights she had spent describing this house, this dream, this future she wanted for Emma. He thought about Bobby, who had died believing his daughter would be raised by the one man he trusted with his life. And he thought about the promise he had made in the hospice when Sarah could barely speak, when every word cost her more energy than climbing a mountain. Take care of Emma, she had whispered. Love her the way Bobby and I would have, and do not ever let anyone make her feel less than she is. Keanu had held her hand and sworn on everything sacred that he would keep that promise. He had sworn on Bobby's truck, on the company they built together. On every sunrise he would see that Bobby and Sarah would not. And now, standing in front of the gates of the home he had bought to honor that promise, surrounded by strangers who saw him as nothing. He remembered something else Sarah used to say. Your silence is your strength, Keanu. Let them talk. Let them assume. And when they are done, show them who you really are. He stopped fighting. He stopped arguing. He stopped trying to convince people who had already written their verdict in permanent ink. Instead, Keanu Reeves did what he had learned to do through decades of loss, grief, and resurrection. He waited. Danny Lawson shoved him toward the front of the truck. Stay right there. Do not move. Keanu did not move. Frank approached the rear door. Little girl, I need you to step out of the vehicle. Emma shook her head frantically, blonde hair flying. No. I want my daddy. Your daddy is in trouble, sweetheart. We need to make sure you are safe. I am safe. My daddy keeps me safe. Catherine sighed with theatrical impatience. Just get her out of there. The police will sort this mess. Frank reached for the door handle, and that is when the gates spoke. A soft chime echoed across the driveway. Every person froze. Frank, Danny, Catherine. The gathering crowd with their phones raised like digital torches. The security panel beside the gate flickered to life with a cool blue glow. A red light swept across the driveway, scanning each face with methodical precision. Frank Patterson, Danny Lawson, Catherine Whitmore, the neighbors. And finally it settled on Keanu. The light turned green. A smooth voice spoke from hidden speakers. Clear, unmistakable. Designed by Bobby Anderson himself before he lost his battle with cancer. Facial recognition confirmed. Welcome home, Mr. Reeves. Nobody moved. The words hung in the air like a verdict delivered from somewhere beyond appeal. Catherine's smile evaporated. Frank's hand dropped from the door handle. Danny took an involuntary step backward as if the ground beneath him had shifted. What did it just say? Someone in the crowd whispered. The screen displayed a photograph. Keanu in a tailored suit, shaking hands with a senator at the opening ceremony for Reeves Security Technologies. Below it, text scrolled in clean blue letters. Honor, Keanu Reeves. Access unlimited. Security clearance maximum. Frank shook his head. That has got to be a glitch. The system has been. It is not a glitch, Keanu said quietly. It is military-grade facial recognition. The most advanced in the world. My best friend designed it before he died, and my company installed it in this neighborhood. He paused, letting the silence do its work. Including your guard station, Mr. Patterson. The color drained from Frank's face like water through a cracked dam. Catherine Whitmore stepped forward, her composure fracturing visibly. You are lying. You hacked it somehow. This is exactly what I would expect from someone like me. Keanu's voice remained calm, steady, absolutely certain. Someone like me spent 25 years making films that people watch when they need to believe that good can triumph over evil. Someone like me built a security company that protects 14 government buildings and over 200 residential communities. Someone like me bought this house 6 months ago because the woman who designed it from her deathbed trusted me to raise her daughter in it. He paused. His brown eyes locked onto Catherine's gray ones. And someone like me, Mrs. Whitmore, is the reason you have a security system at all. My company installed every camera, every sensor, every lock in this neighborhood, including the ones that have been recording everything that happened here tonight. The crowd gasped. Phones tilted upward. Somewhere, someone whispered. Wet? Keanu Reeves, the actor. From the back seat of the truck, Emma's small voice broke through the stunned silence. Daddy, are we going home now? Keanu looked at his daughter, at her tear-streaked face, at her mother's eyes staring back at him, filled with trust so absolute it could move mountains. Yeah, baby, he said softly. We are going home. He turned back to the guards, to Catherine, to all the people who had looked at him and seen a threat instead of a father. But first, Keanu said, reaching slowly into his pocket, I have a few calls to make. The phone felt heavy in his hand. Not from weight, from consequence, from the knowledge of what came next. He dialed a single number and raised it to his ear. "Nia, we have a situation at the main gate." A crisp, professional voice responded instantly. Nia was the artificial intelligence system Bobby had integrated into every Reeves security property, a digital guardian that never slept, never forgot, and never missed a single frame of footage. "I see it, sir. All cameras are recording. What do you need?" Keanu looked at Frank Patterson, whose face had turned the color of old paper. He looked at Danny Lawson, whose swagger had collapsed into something small and trembling. He looked at Catherine Whitmore, who was still standing as if frozen in amber. "Pull their files, all of them, and prepare a termination notice for the entire security detail." His voice never rose above conversational. "Effective immediately. Revoke all access codes, disable all badges. And Nia," he paused, letting the silence stretch like a wire about to snap. "Make sure it is documented. Every word, every action, every threat they made to my daughter. I want it all on record." "Understood, sir. Processing now." Danny grabbed Keanu's shoulder. "You cannot just remove your hand," Keanu said quietly, "or the lawsuit will be the least of your problems." Danny's hand dropped like it had touched something molten. Behind them, the gates began to open. Slow, deliberate, inevitable, golden lights flickered to life along the driveway, illuminating the path to the mansion that Sarah Anderson had designed from a hospital bed while cancer stole her body one breath at a time. Catherine stumbled backward. This cannot." Keanu walked to the rear door of his truck and opened it gently. Emma scrambled into his arms, burying her face in his neck, her small body trembling with the residual fear that no child should ever carry. "It is okay, baby," he whispered against her hair. "We are home now. No one is going to hurt us." He turned one last time to face the crowd. The guards with their dead badges. Catherine with her shattered assumptions. The neighbors with their phones still recording. His voice carried across the driveway, calm and clear, with the weight of a man who had survived more loss than most people could imagine, and still chose dignity over destruction. "You looked at my truck and saw a poor man. You looked at my clothes and saw a con artist. You looked at my daughter and saw a kidnapping victim." He held Emma closer. "You never once thought to look at me and see a father. A man who buried his two best friends and adopted their little girl because he made a promise. A man who built everything he has while holding the hands of the people he was losing." Frank Patterson tried to speak. "Sir, we were just doing your job was to protect this property. Instead, you terrorized its owner and traumatized his child." Keanu's eyes were steady as stone. "You had one job, and you failed." Frank's radio crackled one final time, then went silent. His badge flickered once, twice, then its light died completely. "Access revoked." Nia's voice announced from the gate speakers. "Employment terminated. Security clearance permanently suspended." Danny stared at his own dead badge. This is not happening. But it was. And as Keanu Reeves carried his daughter through the gates of their new home, the iron doors closing behind them with a sound like a chapter ending, every person standing on that street understood something they would carry for the rest of their lives. True power does not need to shout. It just needs to remember who tried to silence it. Keanu did not look back. He could not. Emma's small arms were wrapped so tight around his neck that breathing required effort. But he would not have loosened her grip for anything on earth. "Daddy?" she whispered against his shoulder. "Are the mean people gone? They cannot hurt us anymore, sweetheart? Promise." Keanu pressed his lips to her forehead. "I promise." But even as the words left his mouth, he heard footsteps behind them. Fast, determined. The unmistakable click of expensive heels on pavement, getting closer. "You cannot just walk away from this." Catherine Whitmore's voice cut through the evening air like broken glass. She was at the pedestrian gate, yanking at a handle that no longer recognized her touch. "Open this gate. I am the HOA president. I have rights." "You have nothing?" Keanu said quietly. still facing the house. Not anymore. This is not over, Mr. Reeves. I will have lawyers here by morning. I will have every news outlet in the city asking questions about how a man in a hoodie suddenly owns a mansion in my neighborhood. Keanu turned slowly. Catherine stood on the other side of the iron bars, her platinum hair coming loose from its severe arrangement, her white dress smudged where she had grabbed the gate, and her eyes, those cold, calculating gray eyes, burning with fury that had nowhere left to go. A man in a hoodie, Keanu repeated. Tell me, Mrs. Whitmore, what kind of man wears a hoodie? You know exactly what I mean. Say it. I do not have to say anything. You have been saying it all night, with every look, every assumption, every time you glanced at my truck, my clothes, my daughter. Kinu's voice stayed level, but there was steel underneath, so say it out loud. On camera, he gestured toward the security cameras positioned along the gate, their red lights blinking steadily. Catherine's mouth opened, then closed. For the first time since she had arrived, uncertainty flickered across her face like a candle in a sudden wind. That is what I thought, Keanu said. You are brave enough to think it, brave enough to act on it, but not brave enough to own it. He shifted Emma in his arms and walked toward the front door. You will regret this. Catherine called after him, but her voice had lost its blade. You do not know who I am. I know exactly who you are, Keanu said without turning around. You are the woman who tried to have my daughter taken from me at the gates of my own home. You are the woman who looked at a father and saw a criminal. He paused at the door. And you are the woman who is about to find out what happens when you are wrong. The front door recognized Keanu's approach and unlocked automatically. Warm light spilled onto the porch like an embrace. He stepped inside, and Emma lifted her head for the first time since they had passed through the gates. Daddy, it is so big. Keanu looked around the foyer. The soaring ceiling Sarah had insisted on because she said tall rooms made small people feel important. The curved staircase she had designed to look like it was dancing. The chandelier she had circled in a catalog with a red pen and written, "For Emma," in the margin, 3 weeks before she died. That catalog was still in a box somewhere, packed away with all the other pieces of Sarah that Keanu could not bring himself to release. It is big, is it not? He set Emma down gently, keeping hold of her hand. Want to see your room? I have a room. You have the best room in the whole house. Your mommy picked it out. And Emma's eyes went wide as silver dollars. Mommy picked my room. She picked everything, sweetheart. Every color, every piece of furniture, every little detail. She planned it all just for you. But Mommy is in heaven. Keanu knelt down, bringing himself to Emma's level. This was the part that never got easier. The questions, the explanations, the impossible task of helping a 6-year-old understand why both the most important people in her world were never coming back. She is in heaven, with your daddy Bobby. But before she went there, she worked really hard to make sure you would have the perfect room. She drew pictures of it. She picked out the colors. She even chose the curtains. What color are the curtains? Purple, with little silver stars. Emma's face transformed into pure, radiant joy. Purple is my favorite. I know, baby. Mommy knew too. They walked through the house together, Emma's small warm hand wrapped around 2 of his fingers. Every room held a piece of Sarah. The kitchen she had designed for family dinners she would never share. The living room with the fireplace she had wanted for Christmas mornings she would never see. The reading nook where she had imagined Keanu sitting with Emma, turning pages of storybooks until the afternoon light faded. And then they reached Emma's room. Keanu opened the door and watched his daughter's face undergo a transformation that made every moment of pain he had endured worth it. The walls were painted soft lavender. The bed had a white canopy with tiny fairy lights woven through the fabric like captured stars. The curtains, purple with silver stars, caught the light from those fairy lights and shimmered as if alive. And in the corner, a small white bookshelf was already filled with books Sarah had ordered months before she died. Books she would never get to read to her daughter. Daddy, Emma's voice was barely a whisper. It is like a princess room. That is because you are a princess. Mommy really made this. Every single bit of it. Emma ran to the bed and climbed up, her teddy bear Starlight still clutched in one hand. She lay in the center, arms spread wide, staring up at the canopy and the fairy lights. I can see the stars, Daddy. Just like Mommy wanted. She paused. Do you think she can see me from heaven? Keanu's throat closed. He walked to the bed and sat on the edge, brushing blonde hair from his daughter's forehead with fingers that had once held her mother's hand. Through the worst nights of their lives. I think she sees you every single day, sweetheart. And I think she and your daddy Bobby are so proud of the little girl you are becoming. I miss her. I miss her too. Why did she have to go away? It was the question Emma asked at least once a week, and Keanu still did not have a good answer. How do you explain cancer to a child? How do you make sense of something that makes no sense at all? Sometimes, he said carefully, people get sick in a way that doctors cannot fix. It is not fair. It is not right. But it happens. And when it happened to Mommy, she fought so hard, baby. She fought every single day because she wanted to stay with you. She wanted to watch you grow up. She wanted to be here for everything. But she could not stay. No, she could not. But before she left, she made me promise something. What did she promise? She made me promise to take care of you, to love you enough for her and for your daddy Bobby, to make sure you always knew how special you are, and to never let anyone make you feel less than you are. Emma was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, Is that why you got calm with the mean lady? Keanu almost smiled. What do you mean? You did not yell. You just got really quiet. But I could tell you were upset. Do you know what happens when you shake a bottle of soda? It explodes everywhere. Right, and does the explosion fix anything? Emma considered this. No, it just makes a mess. Exactly. When people are being mean, they want you to explode. They want you to make a mess so they can point at it and say you are the problem. But if you stay calm, the only mess is the one they are making themselves. So being quiet is like not shaking the bottle. Something like that. Your mommy taught me that. She said dignity does not need to shout. And Emma's eyes began to droop. Within minutes, her breathing slowed into the steady rhythm of childhood sleep. Keanu sat beside her for a long time, listening to the silence of the house settle around him like a blanket woven from memories. His phone buzzed. Keanu stepped into the hallway and checked the screen. Sir, we have a situation developing. Nia's voice was calm but urgent. The crowd outside has not dispersed. Mrs. Whitmore appears to be organizing something. I have identified 3 local news vans approaching. Keanu walked to the hall window. The street beyond the gates was alive with movement. Cars, flashlights, phone screens glowing like fireflies in the darkness. She is trying to control the story, Keanu said. Correct. Additionally, live streams from bystanders have already gone viral. The footage has been viewed over 4 million times in the past 90 minutes. 4 million people had watched his daughter scream in terror. 4 million people had seen strangers try to rip his family apart. The terminated guards are talking to reporters. Nia continued. They are claiming wrongful termination and alleging you hacked the security system. Keanu felt something cold settle in his chest. Not anger, something more precise. The kind of focused clarity that came when everything unnecessary burned away and only purpose remained. All footage secured. Unedited. Timestamped. Backed up to 3 separate servers. Good. Pull everything on Patterson and his team. Every incident report. Every complaint. Every time they stop someone at this gate without proper cause. Sear. If they want to play this game, Nia, we will play it. But we play it with facts. That night, while Emma slept in her princess room, and the circus raged beyond his gates. Keanu sat in the study Sarah had designed for him and made 3 phone calls. The first was to his attorney. The second was to Margaret Sullivan, a reporter at the Tribune who had won a Pulitzer for a series on housing discrimination. The third was to a number he had not dialed in over a year, James Walker at NBC. By morning, the world would know the truth. Not the viral clips, not the hot takes. The real story. Dawn broke gray and heavy. Keanu woke to the sound of helicopters and Emma's small hand shaking his shoulder. "Daddy, there are people outside. Lots and lots of people." He pulled back the curtain. News vans, satellite trucks, reporters, photographers, and what looked like hundreds of ordinary people with phones raised toward his gates. By noon, both interviews had been filmed. Keanu had told the story plainly. Bobby's death, Sarah's illness, the company they built together, the house Sarah designed for her daughter, the promise Keanu made to raise Emma as his own, and the night when strangers tried to destroy what a dying mother had created. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Social media ignited. The clip of Keanu describing how Sarah designed their home from a hospital bed while connected to chemotherapy for a daughter she would never watch grow up went viral within hours. 20 million views by evening, 30 million by midnight. The story of a Hollywood legend who adopted his best friend's orphaned daughter and honored a dying mother's wish moved the world in ways no one anticipated. But while the world rallied behind Keanu Reeves, Catherine Whitmore was fighting back. She hired a crisis PR firm. She appeared on television calling the footage selectively edited. She claimed Keanu was a dangerous fraud who had hacked a security system to create a false ownership display. And then, at 11 that night, Keanu received an unexpected phone call. "Mr. Reeves, this is Frank Patterson, the head guard, the man who had laughed in his face and tried to take his daughter. I have information about Catherine Whitmore that you need to hear, information that changes everything." They met at a coffee shop on Maple Street. Frank looked different than he had at the gate. Smaller. Defeated. The arrogance gone, replaced by something that resembled shame. He slid a USB drive across the table. 5 years of records. Emails between Catherine and the security team. Spreadsheets tracking which residents she wanted us to target. Audio recordings of her giving us direct orders. Frank stared at his hands. "It was not just you. You were not the first person we stopped at those gates for looking like you did not belong. There have been dozens. Families she wanted gone. People she decided were beneath her standards. Why?" Keanu asked. "Because she pays us. Cash. Off the books. To make life difficult for certain people until they give up and leave." "Why are you telling me this?" Frank's voice broke. "Because I have a daughter too. She is 8. And I spent all night thinking about someone treating her the way I treated your little girl." He wiped his eyes roughly with the back of his hand. "I cannot undo what I did, but maybe this can stop it from happening again." Keanu pocketed the USB drive. He studied the broken man across from him and made a decision that Sarah would have been proud of. "Thank you for the apology," he said. "I am not ready to accept it yet, but thank you." The files on the USB drive were devastating. 5 years of systematic discrimination orchestrated by Catherine Whitmore. 14 families driven from their homes through harassment, fabricated violations, and targeted intimidation. Emails instructing guards to increase patrols around specific houses. Audio recordings of Catherine explicitly directing guards to make certain residents feel unwelcome based on their appearance, their vehicles, their backgrounds. Keanu worked through the night cataloging everything. By dawn, he had a choice to make. He could release it all immediately. Let the internet tear Catherine apart. Let journalists feast on the story. Let public outrage deliver a verdict no court could match. Or he could do what Sarah would have done. He called Catherine Whitmore and asked for a meeting. She agreed reluctantly. Her house was 3 streets over, immaculate on the outside, sterile on the inside. Catherine answered the door in a cream-colored suit, her armor back in place. But there were dark circles under her eyes that no amount of concealer could hide. "You have 5 minutes." Keanu sat in her living room and pressed play on the audio recording. Catherine's own voice filled the room, giving explicit instructions to target specific families. The color left her face entirely. "How did you—" "Patterson gave it to me, along with 5 years of documentation." Catherine sat down slowly, as if her legs had forgotten how to support her. "What do you want?" "I want to understand. I want to know why." And for the first time since Keanu had met her, Catherine Whitmore told the truth. She had grown up poor. The kind of poor where you wear the same clothes every day and pretend you are not hungry, because shame tastes worse than an empty stomach. She had clawed her way out through sheer force of will, married well, built a life that looked exactly like the life she had always envied from the outside. And then her husband left. Took most of the money, left her with a house in a nice neighborhood and a terror that everything could be stripped away. "I was not protecting standards," she whispered. "I was protecting myself from becoming what I used to be, from letting anyone who reminded me of where I came from get close enough to drag me back." "So you became the person who hurt you most when you were young," Keanu said. Catherine flinched as if he had struck her. "I am giving you a choice," Keanu continued. "The same choice you never gave anyone else. You can fight this, hire more lawyers, spin more stories, and I will release everything, every email, every recording, every piece of evidence." He leaned forward. "Or you can take responsibility, resign from the board, apologize publicly, cooperate with investigations, and spend the rest of your life trying to become the person you should have been all along." "You are asking me to destroy myself." "I am asking you to choose between destruction with dignity and destruction without it." He gave her 48 hours. She used 36. Catherine Whitmore's press conference was nothing like her previous one. No perfect hair, no flawless makeup, no designer armor. She wore a simple gray dress, and her face was bare, pale, and marked by 2 sleepless nights. "For the past 5 years," she said, her voice steady but stripped of everything except honesty, "I have used my position to systematically harass and discriminate against residents who I believe did not belong in this community. I targeted families based on their appearance, their vehicles, their backgrounds. I drove 14 families from their homes. And 2 nights ago, I tried to have a 6-year-old girl taken from her father because he did not look like what I thought a wealthy homeowner should look like." She paused. "I was wrong. I was cruel. And I was everything I thought I was protecting this community against." She resigned. She cooperated. She confessed everything. And then the world moved on. But Catherine Whitmore did not move on. She collapsed. 3 weeks after her press conference, Keanu received a call from Eleanor Brooks, the elderly neighbor who lived across the street. "Mr. Reeves, I thought you should know. Catherine was taken to the hospital last night. Exhaustion. Dehydration. The doctors say she has not been eating." Eleanor paused. "She has no one. Her husband left years ago. No children, no family nearby. The entire neighborhood has turned its back on her." Keanu thanked Eleanor and hung up the phone. That evening, Emma was drawing at the kitchen table while Dorothy Mitchell, the nanny, prepared dinner. Keanu sat across from his daughter, watching her create something with fierce concentration. "What are you drawing, sweetheart?" Emma held up the paper. Stick figures, crudely rendered but recognizable. A tall figure with dark hair. A small figure with yellow hair. 2 floating figures surrounded by stars in the sky, holding hands. And off to the side, a 5th figure standing alone. Completely alone. No one beside her. No stars above her. "That is me and you and Mommy and Daddy Bobby in heaven," Emma explained. "And that," she pointed to the lonely figure, "is the scared lady." Keanu felt something shift inside his chest. The scared lady. The one with the angry eyes. But they are not really angry eyes. "Daddy, They are scared eyes. Remember, you said that. I remember. She is all alone. Emma studied her drawing with the serious expression of someone examining a problem that needed solving. Is she still alone? I think so. Sweetheart, that is sad. Emma picked up a purple crayon and carefully drew a small star above the lonely figure. There. Now Mommy can watch her too. Why would you want Mommy to watch her? She was mean to us. Emma looked at her father as if the answer were the most obvious thing in the world. Because Mommy says in heaven, everyone is forgiven. Is that why heaven is happy, Daddy? Because nobody is alone there. Keanu stared at his 6-year-old daughter and felt something break open inside him that he had been holding together with anger and righteousness, and the absolute certainty that he was correct. He was correct. Catherine had been wrong. What she did was unforgivable. But Emma was not asking about correct and incorrect. She was asking about something bigger, something Sarah had tried to teach him during those endless nights in the hospital. Hatred is a weight, Sarah had whispered once, her voice barely audible over the heart monitor. And the person carrying it is not the one who caused it. It is the one who refuses to set it down. The next morning, Keanu drove to the hospital. He brought Emma's drawing. Catherine Whitmore lay in a bed that seemed to swallow her. She had lost weight. Her platinum hair lay limp against the pillow. Her gray eyes, once so cold and commanding, were hollow with exhaustion and something worse than shame. Something that looked like the complete absence of hope. When she saw Keanu standing in the doorway, she turned her face toward the wall. Have you come to watch? Her voice was barely a whisper. Everyone else has. The reporters, the neighbors, all watching Catherine Whitmore finally get what she deserves. No. Keanu pulled a chair beside her bed and sat down. I came to give you something. He placed Emma's drawing on the bedside table. Catherine turned her head slowly and looked at it. Her eyes found the lonely figure standing apart from the family, and the single purple star Emma had drawn above it. My daughter made this, Keanu said. She calls you the scared lady. She drew you all alone because she asked me if you had anyone to visit you, and I told her you did not. So she drew a star above you because she said her mommy watches over everyone from heaven, even the people who are scared. Catherine's composure shattered, not the controlled cracking of a public persona. This was deeper, more fundamental. A wall that had been built over decades of fear and pride and loneliness simply dissolved. Tears streamed down her face as she stared at the drawing of a child who had every reason to hate her and had chosen compassion instead. I did not come here to forgive what you did, Keanu said quietly. What you did to those families, what you did to Emma, those things have consequences, and you have to face them. Then why are you here? Because my daughter taught me something last night. She taught me that a person can be wrong and still be worth sitting with. She taught me that being alone is not a punishment anyone deserves, no matter what they have done. And she taught me that her mother's love was big enough to include even the people who hurt us. Catherine pressed Emma's drawing against her chest and wept, not the weeping of someone seeking sympathy or performing remorse. The weeping of someone who had spent a lifetime building walls and had finally run out of bricks. I grew up alone, she whispered through her tears. I have been alone my entire life. Even when I was married, even when I was president of the board with 200 people following my every word, I was alone. Because the only way I knew how to survive was to control everything and everyone around me. And the moment I could not control something, I destroyed it. I know, Keanu said. You should hate me. I should. Part of me does. But the woman who entrusted me with her daughter spent the last months of her life designing a house she would never live in, for a child she would never watch grow up, because she believed that love outlasts everything, even death. He paused. And if love can outlast death, Catherine, then maybe it can outlast what you did to us. She looked at him with eyes that held the first glimmer of something other than fear. I do not deserve this. No one deserves forgiveness. That is what makes it worth giving. Over the weeks that followed, something unexpected happened. Catherine Whitmore, stripped of her position, her reputation, and every defense mechanism she had built over 60 years, began to change. It started small. She wrote letters, 11 handwritten apologies to the families she had driven from the neighborhood. Not form letters, not lawyer-drafted statements, real letters, pages long, detailing exactly what she had done to each family, acknowledging the pain she had caused, and asking for nothing in return. 7 families wrote back. 2 told her they would never forgive her, and Catherine accepted that without argument. 3 sent messages of cautious acknowledgement. And 2, the retired schoolteacher Eleanor Anderson and a single mother named Rebecca Mills, actually agreed to meet with her. Those meetings were brutal. Rebecca sat across from Catherine in a community center and told her, in explicit detail, what it felt like to be stopped at the gates of her own neighborhood 3 times a week. What it felt like to have her children ask why the guards always looked at them like they were doing something wrong. What it felt like to finally give up and move to an apartment she could barely afford because staying had become unbearable. Catherine listened to every word without defending herself, without explaining, without offering context or excuses. She just sat there and received the full weight of what she had done. Frank Patterson joined her. He had pleaded guilty to his role in the harassment campaign and been sentenced to 200 hours of community service at a housing advocacy organization. The irony of a former security guard who had kept people out, now working to help people find homes, was not lost on him. Maybe that is how we learn, Frank told Keanu during one of their conversations. Maybe the punishment that actually changes people is the one that makes them feel what they made others feel. And Catherine felt it. Every day. In every letter she received. In every meeting where she sat across from someone whose life she had damaged. In the quiet moments when she remembered the look on Emma's face through the truck window and understood, truly understood, what she had become. 3 months after the night at the gates, Keanu organized something that nobody expected. He sent an invitation to every family in the neighborhood, including Catherine Whitmore, a dinner at Thornwood estate. Not a fundraiser, not a publicity event, just a meal, in the home Sarah had designed. Around the table she had chosen for gatherings that bring people together instead of pushing them apart. The evening arrived warm and golden. Emma helped Keanu set the table, carefully placing napkins at each seat with the precision of a surgeon and the enthusiasm of a child who had been told she was in charge of something important. "Is the scared lady coming?" Emma asked. "I invited her. I do not know if she will come. I hope she comes." I drew her another picture. Guests arrived throughout the evening. Eleanor Brooks with her gentle smile and a casserole. The Henderson family from down the street with their 3 boys. The Davidsons. The Millers. 12 families in total, filling Sarah's dining room with the sound of conversation and laughter and the clinking of glasses. But one chair remained empty. Keanu checked his phone. No message from Catherine. He was not surprised. Coming here, to this house, to face the man and the child she had wronged in front of the neighbors who had witnessed her downfall. That required a kind of courage that might be beyond what Catherine could summon. And then, at 7:30, the gate intercom chimed. "Mr. Reeves, there is someone at the gate." Keanu looked at the security monitor. Catherine Whitmore stood outside the iron bars, alone, wearing a simple blue dress instead of her usual designer armor. Her platinum hair was down, loose, softer than Keanu had ever seen it, and she was holding something in her hands. A plant. A small lavender bush, still in its nursery pot. She was not moving. She was just standing there, staring at the gates that had once been her instrument of exclusion, looking terrified. "Open the gate," Keanu said. The iron doors swung open. Catherine did not move. Then Emma appeared. She had been watching from the window, and before Keanu could stop her, she was running down the driveway in her purple dress and bare feet, blonde hair flying behind her. She stopped right in front of Catherine Whitmore. Catherine looked down at the small girl she had once tried to have taken from her father, the child whose screams she had ignored, the 6-year-old who had drawn a purple star above her lonely figure and asked her mommy in heaven to watch over the scared lady. "You came," Emma said, beaming. "I?" Catherine's voice faltered. "I did not know if I should." Emma took Catherine's free hand, the one not holding the lavender bush, with the casual confidence of a child who has never learned to be afraid of forgiveness. "Come in. Daddy made chocolate chip pancakes for dessert because I told him smiley face pancakes are for babies now." Catherine let out a sound that was halfway between a laugh and a sob. She looked up at Keanu, who had followed Emma down the driveway and now stood a few feet away watching. "I brought this," Catherine said, holding up the lavender bush with trembling hands. "For the garden. Sarah's garden. I thought—" She swallowed hard. "Lavender means healing. I read that somewhere." Keanu looked at the plant, then at Catherine, then at his daughter, who was already pulling the older woman toward the front door as if welcoming a long-lost grandmother. He thought about Sarah, about what she would say if she could see this moment, about the woman who had spent her dying months designing a home meant to be filled with love, not barricaded by fear. "Welcome home, Mrs. Whitmore," Keanu said. Catherine's tears fell silently. "I do not deserve this." "No," Keanu agreed, "but that is not the point." They walked inside together. Emma led Catherine to the empty chair and pulled it out for her with exaggerated formality. "This is your seat. I saved it special." Catherine sat down at a table surrounded by the neighbors she had once terrorized, in a house owned by the man she had once tried to destroy, beside a child who had more wisdom in her 6-year-old heart than Catherine had accumulated in 6 decades of living. The dinner lasted 3 hours. It was awkward at first, painfully so. Some neighbors could barely look at Catherine. Others acknowledged her with tight nods. But Emma, oblivious to the undercurrents, chattered endlessly about her purple room, her new school friends, her teddy bear Starlight, and the chocolate chip pancakes she had helped make. And slowly, imperceptibly, the tension began to dissolve. Not vanish, dissolve. Like ice in warm water, there was still coldness, still edges. But the sharp, unbearable rigidity of it was softening. After dinner, Catherine found Keanu alone in the kitchen, washing dishes by hand, even though the house had a perfectly good dishwasher. "Sarah's rule," he explained when Catherine looked confused. "She always said washing dishes by hand was meditation. You think about your day. You feel the water. You clean something. Simple." And Catherine picked up a towel and began drying the dishes Keanu placed in the rack. They worked in silence for a long time. "I spent 20 years keeping people out," Catherine finally said, "building walls, manning gates, deciding who belonged and who did not." She stared at the plate in her hands. "And now, I understand that the gates I built were never protecting me. They were trapping me. What are you going to do now?" "I am working with Patterson at the Housing Advocacy Center, answering phones, filing paperwork, helping families who face what I put others through." She almost smiled. "The irony is not lost on me. Maybe irony is how the universe teaches stubborn people." This time, Catherine did smile. Small, fragile, but real. "Your daughter," she said. "She called me the scared lady." She did. She was right. I have been scared my entire life. Scared of being poor again. Scared of being seen as less than. Scared of losing control. Catherine set the plate down carefully. "Sarah designed this house from a hospital bed, and she was dying, and she spent her last energy creating something beautiful for the people she loved. I had everything, health, money, position, and I spent my energy destroying things." She paused. "What does that say about me?" "It says you were broken. And broken people break things. That is not an excuse. But it is a starting point. A starting point for what? For becoming someone who builds instead of destroys. Catherine was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice carried a conviction Keanu had never heard from her before. I am going to find every family I drove away. Not just write letters. Find them, face them. And I am going to spend however many years I have left making sure that no one else goes through what they went through. What you went through, that sounds like a good start. It is not enough. No, Keanu said honestly. It is not, but it is a start. Later that night, after the guests had gone and Emma was asleep in her princess room with starlight on the pillow beside her, Keanu stood in front of the fireplace in the living room. Sarah's fireplace, designed for Christmas mornings she would never see. On the mantel sat two frame photographs. The first Bobby and Sarah on their wedding day, young and impossibly alive, laughing at the camera with the kind of joy that makes the future feel infinite. The second, Sarah and Emma, taken 6 months before the diagnosis, both laughing at something Keanu had said from behind the camera. Sarah's blue eyes alive with a joy so pure it could power cities. Emma on her mother's lap, a toddler with the same eyes, reaching for something beyond the frame. Keanu touched the glass gently. She has your eyes, Sarah, he whispered. Your heart, your ability to see good in people who do not deserve it. He shifted his gaze to Bobby's photograph. And she has your stubbornness, Bobby. That look she gets when she decides something needs fixing and nothing in the world is going to stop her. He paused. I am learning from her every day, just like I learned from both of you. He looked around the room, at the walls Sarah had chosen, the floors she had selected, the colors she had agonized over during those impossible nights when the morphine made her drift and the only thing anchoring her to earth was the act of creation. We did it. Sarah, we are home. I kept my promise. He thought about everything that had happened since that night at the gates. The confrontation, the viral footage, the interviews, Catherine's confession, the letters from families who had suffered in silence for years, Frank Patterson's broken apology, Eleanor Brooks's gentle wisdom, and his daughter, his incredible, impossible, miraculous daughter, who had looked at the woman who tried to destroy their family and saw not a monster, but a scared human being in desperate need of a purple star. She was not his by blood. She was his by something far more permanent. By a promise made between two hands in a hospital room. By 2 years of midnight comforting and morning pancakes and clumsy braids and bedtime stories. By the absolute, unshakable certainty that love does not require DNA to be real. He walked upstairs and checked on Emma one last time. She was asleep, fairy lights casting soft constellations on the purple curtains. Starlight was tucked under one arm, and beside her pillow, a new drawing. This one showed all the stick figures together. The tall, dark-haired figure, the small, blonde figure, 2 floating figures in the stars holding hands, and the formerly lonely figure, now standing among the others, with a purple star above her head and what appeared to be a lavender bush in her hand. At the bottom, in wobbly 6-year-old handwriting, Emma had written, "Everybody gets a star." Keanu leaned down and kissed his daughter's forehead. "Everybody gets a star," he whispered. "Your mommy and daddy would have loved that." He walked to his own room. The bed was too big for one person. It had always been too big. But Sarah had insisted he get a king size for the master bedroom because she said a man who was going to raise a daughter alone deserved space to spread out. "You will need it," she had said from the hospital bed, trying to smile through the pain, "because Emma kicks in her sleep, and she is going to end up in your bed more nights than you think." She had been right. For the first 6 months, Emma slept in his bed every single night, her small feet pressed against his ribs, her blonde hair fanned across his pillow like spun gold. And even now, years later, she still climbed in beside him during thunderstorms. He lay down in the center and stared at the ceiling. Outside, the neighborhood was quiet. The gates were closed, But they were no longer barriers, they were boundaries. And boundaries, unlike walls, have doors. Catherine Whitmore was somewhere out there, beginning the long, painful process of becoming someone worthy of the forgiveness a 6-year-old had offered freely. Frank Patterson was preparing for another day at the Housing Advocacy Center, answering phones for the same kind of people he had once kept out. 11 families scattered across the country were reading handwritten letters and deciding whether second chances were something they could believe in. And in a purple room down the hall, a little girl with her mother's eyes slept beneath fairy lights, dreaming of a world where everybody gets a star. Keanu closed his eyes. Sarah had once told him, during one of those long hospital nights when the line between dreaming and dying grew thin as paper, "The house is not the walls, Keanu. The house is not the roof or the floors or even the purple curtains. The house is what happens inside it. The house is the forgiveness. The house is the welcome. The house is the moment you open the door and say to someone who does not deserve it, 'Come in.'" He had not understood her then. He had been too consumed with the fear of losing another person. He loved to hear what she was teaching him, but he understood now. The house Sarah Anderson designed was never meant to be a fortress. It was never meant to keep people out or guard against the world's cruelty or provide shelter from the judgment of strangers. It was meant to be a door that opens, a door that welcomes, a door that says, no matter who you are, no matter what you have done, no matter how broken or scared or lost you may be, there is room for you here. Keanu took a deep breath and let it out slowly. True power does not announce itself. It does not need to shout or threaten or demand recognition. It does not hide behind gates or uniforms or designer dresses. It does not judge what it does not understand or destroy what it cannot control. True power sits on the edge of a hospital bed and designs a home it will never live in. True power holds a dying mother's hand and promises to love her daughter as his own. True power stands silent at the gates of its own home, while strangers try to tear it apart and refuses to become what they expect. And true power, the kind that changes the world one person at a time, kneels down to a 6-year-old's level and learns from her that everybody gets a star. Keanu Reeves closed his eyes and slept, and for the first time in longer than he could remember, he did not dream of loss. He dreamed of home, of Sarah laughing in the kitchen, of Bobby debugging code at the dining table, of Emma running through rooms that shimmered with fairy lights and lavender. And somewhere in that dream, he heard Sarah's voice one last time. "You did it, Keanu. You kept your promise. You opened the door." He smiled in his sleep, and the house, Sarah's house, Emma's house, their house, breathed softly around him. Safe, whole, and finally, after everything, home. Thank you for following this story. Let us know in the comments below if this story has moved you and you would like to stand with us in bringing more voices of truth and hope to light. Please consider supporting our work. Even the smallest gift helps us continue creating and sharing these powerful stories. You can find the donate link in the description. And of course, do not forget to subscribe so you will not miss the next chapter we are preparing for you.